Good morning, and welcome. Welcome to the garden. Welcome to Garden Conversations with Rose. It's September 14th. It's a Tuesday in beautiful sunny Antigua, and we're here again. Today, we're looking at suicide awareness. I have with me my beautiful, gorgeous, intelligent little sister, my little babe, as I call her from time to time, Ramona Samuel, and she will be our featured speaker or featured guest on the interview. Ramona is a very creative journaling artist, and she is also a Methodist minister in the county of Essex in the UK. Because the two of us have had a very similar experience, that being our dad having committed suicide, I thought it a very good idea that the both of us come together to present to you today. Now, on September the 10th, everywhere in the world, persons looked at the idea of suicide awareness. And even in Little Antigua, within the last 12 days or so, there had actually been 3 suicides. 2 of them being males within the last 2 days. This is very dear to my heart, as most of you would know when you go to my page. And so today, we will both start off by giving our own reactions and response to our dad having committed suicide. So in 1997, in the month of October, as I was doing my undergrad, I got the very sad news one day when I came from classes that my dad had been hospitalized. And why had he been hospitalized? He had been hospitalized because it was said that he had drunk Gramazone. And at first, I was very, very much shocked. I was in disbelief. I did not know how to think about it. As a matter of fact, I didn't even think I believed the whole thing. But I had to rush to the hospital anyway. So there was I rushing up to the hospital to see what had actually happened. And in the process of doing so, I brought with me my 2 children I had at the time. On arriving there, I think there were many more emotions that came out of all of that, because as I looked on him, I saw a broken man. I looked at his lips, they were all burnt. He tried so hard to speak to me. No words were coming out. It was just like, and at that time, I felt so sad for my dad. As I would have said before on my page, my dad was a very confused man. And so, whereas there were times when he was very, very good, there were times when he was very bad. He was a very complicated person to deal with. But bearing all of that, I felt really sad to look at my dad in that state. And what broke it even more for me was that my little son, he was about 4, I think, or 3 at the time, he said, "Mommy, why does grandpa's mouth look like that? Why does granddad's mouth look like that? Why can't he speak and say anything?" And that even broke it more for me, because there was I looking at my dad, a sad man, just unable to deal with himself. And I waited and I waited with him. Unfortunately, maybe about half an hour after I left, we got the news that he had passed. And then again, there were more emotions rising up. I think I felt rather angry. Angry because I said, why did he have to choose that path? Why did he have to leave? I know it wasn't all the best for us with regards to our relationship, but I love my dad. And I tried my best to see him as a good dad, although there were times when it was very, very hard to do so. I felt angry. And I think also another bit of emotion that came out was that of numbness. So even with the preparations of the funeral, I don't think I had anything to do with it. I think my brothers took care of that. I went to the funeral home, but I think I refused to see him. So those emotions were so many. I think the emotion of guilt came many years later, because I thought, not because I thought what could I have done to stop him, but what type of relationship would I have crafted that would make it a little easier for him. It was very hard. It was very hard. So suicide my friends and followers, isn't easy at all for any family member. I could have said a lot more, but I think now I wish to allow my sister Ramona to give her own reactions to the death of my father by suicide. So Ramona.
It's interesting. Obviously we'd never talked. I realize that we've never talked about this, because this is the first time I'm hearing what you experienced. I didn't know that you'd seen him, or I don't remember. If I had known, I don't remember that you'd actually seen him. So just hearing you talk about that is bringing up for me interesting emotions.
Yeah.
Of, I guess, of regret in some ways that I didn't have that chance to see him. So for me, hearing about it, I remember you called me and I was home alone at the time because Calvin was at work, and you wouldn't speak to me. You kept asking when Calvin was going to be home. And then I gave you his number because I thought maybe you were planning a surprise or something. So I gave you his number so you could call him. And then he came home from work that night and, got me to sit down and told me that Dad had died. And I think I just burst into tears because it was just like out of the blue, and then discovering that he had, he died by suicide was even harder. And for me, I felt of pain, I felt anger, I felt regrets, and all of those would just come in at different points. I felt guilt as well, which is interesting. I think I felt guilty because when we had been to Antigua not long before, I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
And so, and I didn't get to see him, and I wanted to see him. I remember trying to find out where he was staying and didn't get to see him. And I remember thinking, oh, if I had only got to see him, if I had tried harder, maybe he wouldn't have done this, which is an interesting response because obviously it wasn't because of something I did, but that's what happens, I think, with suicide for family members, is that you feel guilty that there was something you could have done or maybe reacted in a different way or something. So being away from home, 4,000 plus miles away when this is happening, you're not on the ground. So when I think when I came to Antigua for the funeral, that's when maybe a lot of my emotions went into place. And the anger was angry at him because of all the stuff that we'd been through with him. And I felt like, how dare he do this to us after all that he put us through? How dare he do this? And he didn't even make amends for the things he did to us. So that was my anger. But I also felt a deep sadness because it's like, oh my goodness. I think the sadness probably came later in terms of thinking, what kind of pain, what drives a person to do that? What kind of deep pain must the person be in to take their own life? And I think one of the regrets was that he didn't know I was pregnant with my daughter, my first child, with Tiana. And in my head, I thought, oh, if he knew I was pregnant, then maybe he wouldn't have done that. So it's really interesting how different emotions come at play, and you were never prepared for it. And at the funeral again, I remember being really angry because we were talking about the eulogy, and I don't know why I was tasked with the eulogy. I think nobody else wanted to do it. And I felt angry because normally at a funeral, when you have a eulogy, people say lovely, nice things about the person who's died. I thought, I can't go up there and say lovely, nice things because I was so angry. Mm-hmm. But I did it, and I think I just kind of said, things were hard. I think I was truthful. And I didn't try to bring him down in his death. But at the same time, I felt I needed to be honest with how I was feeling. And I remember not being able to look at the, because you have open caskets in Antigua. I can't remember if I looked at the body. I don't think I wanted to. But I just remember just feeling angry and numb as well, and going through this kind of weird state. This is happening. I remember going to collect some flowers, a wreath at this floral place, and again feeling angry that I was having to spend money on somebody who I felt had been horrible to me, not just to me, but to a family. But yeah, so I think it's only as time passed, perhaps more compassion came into play. So I think at the time, I don't think I had a lot of compassion. I think I had a lot of anger. So anger and regret was the main thrust of my. Is it raining?
Yes.
Oh no.
It is, but it looks like it's just a passing cloud. So
Okay.
I don't want to, I hope the rain doesn't do any damage to.
Yeah, where's your umbrella?
It's all the way inside. I don't want to move.
Angelica text.
I don't want
Angelica text asking to bring you an umbrella.
I don't want to move from here. This is too good. Going what's happening now.
Yes, Angelica text asking to bring an umbrella.
Yes.
And hold it over.
I think the rain's gone.
So I think it's gone.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I think, for me, that was, that's kind of what I experienced.
Yeah.
And so my children have never met
him,
their grandfather, and that's one of my
regrets.
I don't know if I can call it regret, because it's not like I could have done. Regret suggests that it's something you could have done. A person could have. It's nothing I could have done. But for them, I suppose I feel sad for them that they never got to meet their grandfather.
Yeah. So the thing is, that is the things that you said brought back so many memories, because one never ever knows what effect that suicide can have. But as you talked about all your emotions, I think too that I saw all of that anger. And now that I'm older and I'm hearing of all the suicide that are around, I cannot help but empathize with the family members, although I don't even know who they are. And so for me now, as I would have said earlier, the guilt part was that I thought, how could I have made a difference in our relationship? And so I think the idea now of bringing an awareness is more important now, because persons out there need to know how to deal with potential victims of suicide, and even when the person dies, how to deal with it, because no one is ever prepared for that sort of thing. Okay, so I want to ask you now, from your perspective as a clergy woman, in your practice, have you met families who would have gone through a similar fate? What would their reactions be, and how were you best able to walk them through the whole ordeal? Did you feel as if you were competent enough to do that? And if you felt as if you had did justice in getting them through?
I don't recall that I have done a suicide funeral. I have memory of one where there might have been, but the family never divulged that. And the only reason, I think it's because they didn't want to say the Lord's Prayer or something like that. But it's interesting, and that just shows how much we don't talk about suicide. So the family never divulged that. So there was no way for me to offer any kind of support that wasn't part of my usual way of dealing with bereavement in families. I think for me, what I would say is that one of the things I've learned about dealing with people when they're bereaved is how much people don't talk about the badness, the bad things. So people very much focus on the good that the person did. It doesn't matter who, what they did, who they was. People tend to focus on the good, and they will say things like, well, we've had our struggles. No family is without struggles, but they never really. They
don't go into detail. They don't.
No. That's part of the problem, is that we are not talking. We're not being open enough about it. So I have a colleague whose husband died by suicide, and she has become very vocal about talking about suicide and prevention of it. And she shared her experiences online, sort of in the weeks and months passing. And she shared all the range of emotions that she felt, as a way of bringing some awareness, and to say to people, we need to talk to each other, and we need to support each other. So I think what I would say is that we have to create safe spaces for people, to be able to talk about those things. Because I know I've had my own struggles. I've had, suicidal thoughts in the past. And this, that wasn't something I was telling anybody, and there was no indication for anybody to see that there was something wrong. It's not like, it's never overt. Most times when people die by suicide, people always say, oh my goodness, he always seemed like such a nice person, or she always seemed happy, or he always seemed so quiet, or whatever. There is never usually this great sign that's beaming out at you. So people carry this burden alone. And I think the reason people carry it alone is because, rightly or wrongly, they don't feel supported. They don't feel that they can share that with other people, or they don't, because of the turmoil that's happening inside their head. They're not in a place where they can rationalize it and say, gosh, I need to speak to somebody, most times, and so they carry that burden alone. And I think how we respond to when people die by suicide says a lot to other people. So oftentimes when you would hear people saying, oh, that person is selfish, how could they do this, blah, blah, blah. And I often say, when we say things like that, what we're doing is shutting down anybody that we know and love who might be having difficulties, because then they'll feel, I can never say this to them because they won't understand. And so we have to be careful what language we use, and how we talk about mental health in general, mental illness in general. And I don't know if you notice, I use the term die by suicide rather than commit suicide. And the reason I do that is because we know that there was a time when it was, I guess it was classed as in the same way as killing somebody, as an offense. So when you commit something, it means that you're doing something illegal or wrong, whatever. So I prefer to say die by rather than commit. And that's just the way my mind works.
Okay. I think in the region still, it is still classed as a type of murder of sorts, because you have homicide, which is a killing of another human being, and then suicide. Because I believe, I stand corrected, but I think that if someone commits suicide now in this region, tries to commit suicide rather, I think maybe there would be an indication of in the law trying to find out what happened with the person and maybe try to investigate. I stand corrected, but I believe it's still classed as that, commit suicide. But you said something interesting, that because there are no indications of someone having those type of thoughts, what I heard from underneath that was, because we never know, we probably maybe need to make ourselves more available, so that, and I think you termed it as safe spaces. So we make ourselves available so that persons can feel comfortable coming and speak to us, open up to us. And I always say that every human being needs to have at least one person that he or she feels comfortable telling anything and everything to without fear of being put down. Just the person being able to listen to them and maybe even in some way give them a sense of assurance as if they can assist. So that is what I heard from you saying, making ourselves available. But when you said safe spaces, because we never know what's inside of people's mind. And that's why sometimes I like to say too, you can always see a bruise or a scar or a cut, but you can't ever see what's happening on the inside of someone else. All right. And so I think we are moving right along into the other part I wanted to ask you, because you hadn't had that actual experience openly, but what about the types of, okay, well, you did touch about it a bit when you talked about having safe spaces, but within the church now, within the church, because we don't normally do that. So within the church, what possibly can church leaders do, laymen or even those high up in authority do among their members? Because you and I both know that within the Christian realm, in particular evangelists, the idea of suicide might not necessarily be looked upon in a favorably light. Maybe some of them would, but generally speaking, it might not be. And even within the general church body, of course, maybe members might be wondering why that person had to go that way. And we like to talk about the faith in God and everything. I'm not dispelling that, because I do believe our faith can take us through a whole lot, but then persons get low sometimes. So from that perspective, what sort of support do you see? Two things, the church giving, and then in general, society on a whole. So three rather. So the church, society, and within families. So it's a three things. So yes.
Yeah. I think I would start with the language that we use and what we say. And I did touch a little bit about that earlier. Particularly in the Christian circles, we like to pacify. Yeah, we like to make things. And I was having a conversation earlier with my staff meeting just now, and saying that as society, we want to fix things. We want to make things better. So if somebody's crying, we want to make them stop crying. And then actually trying to find out why is it crying? Why is there sadness in the first place? And what is our sadness trying to say to us? So I don't think we're very good at dealing with our emotions, because we try to either suppress our emotions or we try to fix our emotions. So sadness, anger, pain, all those what we term as negative, we want to we don't want to deal with them. We want to get rid of them. And by doing so, what we do is create this atmosphere where people have what I would call stunted growth, because they haven't dealt with all those emotions that they have and the reasons behind the emotion, because there's always a reason behind the emotion, you know. And in church context, we use verses a lot, and that annoys me a lot. So I was speaking to, when I was speaking to our cousin the other day, you know, whose fiance passed, and somebody said to him, in his grief, God has a better plan. God had, you know, and that might be true. And he said, you know, I can't see his plan, Ramona. I know that maybe later on I might see whatever the plan, but at this moment in my grief, I cannot see the plan. So the point is we have to not just pluck scripture verses out and give to people. We need to listen to people and understand what it is they're going through, rather than trying to stick a plaster on, you know, the elastic, what we call the plaster, Band-Aid, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, we constantly trying to put Band-Aid on things that require deep surgery, you know. We have, and so people say things, everything happens for a reason. Oh, I hate that one. God wanted, you know, God has a better plan. Everything will work out. All those are true. All those things are valid. But in the moment when somebody is going through that deep agony, because that's mental illness, it's an agony, they cannot see that. And what they want is for people to be able to listen to them. So listening, what is the person saying? And I think one of the most important things you can do for somebody who is having mental health struggles is to ask them, what can I do for you? Rather than assume, well, let me give you some scripture verses. Or I remember somebody asked me, have you been reading your Bible? You know, how is your prayer life? When I was in such a state, I literally could not pray in the sense of saying, okay, I'm going to pray now. You know, looking back, I know that prayer was happening because I was communicating with God. But in terms of, you know, going to see, you know, do a prayer. And so in those moments, saying things like that isn't necessarily helpful. So I would say what the Bible says, be slow to speak and quick to hear or to listen. The Bible says, but we try to be quick to speak and slow to listen. And so from a church perspective, I would say, calm down with the, hold on a second, hold on. Just put on my fan. I would say, before you pluck a scripture, just take some time to listen to what the person is saying and ask them, okay, how can I help? And ask them, how can I pray for you? You know, or what can I do? And let them guide you. And they might say, I don't know, you know, or they might say, I'm not sure. Or they might say, I don't want you to do anything, and that's okay. And what we can do is say to them, okay, I just know I am here for you whenever. And sometimes in terms of family life, find out what the person needs help in doing. So for example, if somebody's going through a really, really bad time mentally, they might not be able to cook. Yeah, they can't care for themselves in that way to cook. So maybe offer to make them a meal, you know, and you don't even necessarily have to ask them, especially in the Caribbean context. You can just show up with some food, you know, and things like that without saying anything. Those simple things create that safe space I talk about for them to be able to open up and know that there is support for them. Because if we simply hear what they're saying and leave them to themselves, then they're not really sure that we're going to be able to catch them when they're falling, you know. So it's being able to say, what can I do? And offering practical suggestions, practical help, you know, saying, okay, I can come and wash your hair for you. So if it's a woman or man or whoever, because sometimes a person, I remember, I just didn't shower. Yeah, I didn't look after myself. I just wasn't in that state of mind. So saying, let me come and wash your hair for you. Let me come and comb your hair. Let me come and you know, help you tidy up the house. Or if they have children, take the children out, you know, say, I'll come and get the children and give you some time alone, or take them out. Say, let me come and take you. We'll just go for a walk, go for a drive. If you can't afford it, take them out for a meal. Just little things like that. Just being community and offering help in those ways. And I think that can be from church to society to family. All those things you can do if you have some level of relationship with the person. If it's somebody you don't know, you're not familiar with, asking the question, what can I do, is so vital, rather than telling them things. Because I think we do that a lot. We tell them, we say, well, maybe you need to do so. Don't just ask them, or have the conversation. Okay, what are some things you're trying to do to help you out of the funk that you're in? What have you tried? And listen, say, okay, so you try that. And then maybe ask it, if you have a suggestion, do it as a question and say, have you thought about just putting some music on and just listen to that for a few minutes? So instead of saying, oh, just listen to some music, do it as a question. So that it comes from them and they are taking ownership of what's happening, because they are the only ones who can help, who can take ownership of what's happening. Yeah, I think I've said a lot. I don't know if any of that makes sense.
That's fine. That's fine. So while you were talking, I was jotting down a few things that I thought came out of all what you said. So I'll just kind of go over them quickly. So I heard the underlying theme I heard all through was the idea of being very gentle throughout, um, opening up and allowing emotions to run their course, because we don't do that very well. I also heard being very careful of the type of language that we use. That's very, very important. And knowing too that the type of response that the person gives may not necessarily be what we are hoping to hear. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is so that they are comfortable, that they are able to speak to us. And in everything that we do, there's a type of gentleness that we need to employ while going through. There's something else I also heard, that the idea of the linkage between ill mental health and suicide. So in speaking, I think you sort of hinted that the family members who are left behind, that even the potential victims, there seems to be a measure of ill mental health that is present. Hence the reason for, in the case of the potential victim, hence the reason why they might have gone that way. And in the case of the family members that are left behind, the idea of how they are coping, because if they aren't coping, whatever way they're coping will signify that the mental health is not in a balanced state, because one doesn't have to be crazy or mad to know that our mental health is not as it should. So it segued right into the other thing I wanted to speak about, was the linkage between ill mental health and suicide. So if you want to speak a little bit, would it be correct to say that persons who are really, really down in a bad way, mentally, in an ill mental health state, are they more prone to commit suicide? Or can it happen on the behalf of anyone who may not necessarily be totally down, but maybe going through a little thing? So is anyone immune? Well, I don't know if you can answer that because you're not really a psychologist or psychiatrist, but their linkage really.
Yeah, I do believe there is a link, because if you think about it, if you are thinking rationally, so for example, if I have a bad day at work, if I'm in a good mental state, I won't see that as the end of the world. Yeah. I'll just say, oh, I've had a bad day at work and I'm going to go home, and just chill out a little bit and relax. I might go for a walk, read a book, call a friend. Yeah. So if I'm in a good mental state, that's what I'll do. However, if somebody who is suffering with the mental health have a bad day, that is like pile on to everything else that's happening underneath the surface. So they see it as, oh my goodness, I'm a horrible person. I'm useless. I am no good. I can't even do well at work. How am I going to do well as a family? I'm a terrible brother. I'm a terrible sister. I'm a terrible father. I'm a terrible mother. It would just be better off without me, because I'm no good. You see what I mean? It's just a difference.
Yes.
And it's that kind of, I don't think anybody just wakes up and decides to kill themselves. I think it's a product of, if you think of the word about suppressing our emotions and our early, that suppression, after a while, if you suppress something, so for example, if I have a fizzy drink and I've got it and I'm all going around with it and it's been shaken up all over the place, it's bubbling, it's there. When I open it,
yes.
So that happens when with our emotions, where we either we're suppressing our emotions, and that could lead to bad mental health, because we all have mental health. Some of us mental health are better than others, basically. In fact, they're saying the statistics, certainly for here in the UK, is 1 in 4 people will at some point experience bad mental health. So 1 in 4, that's quite a significant number. And so we all have bad days, but it's not the result. It's not just having a bad day that makes somebody goes that, because we will say, oh, why did they just jump up and do that? No, that was a result of a process of over time. Yes. When stuff pile up one on top of the other, and then you have that where it can no longer be held. You can't hold that anymore. Where you feel utter despair is what I think a person feels. Utter despair, where you feel I would just be better off. The pain I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, I would just be better off dead. And not only that, my family members will be better off without me because I'm such a horrible person. So the one's self-esteem is in a terrible state when they're suffering with bad mental health. They can't see any good that they do. So I talk about work, you have a bad day at work, or if I've got good mental health and I make a mistake, I'll say, oh, I've made a mistake. And I'll try to correct the mistake. If I'm in a terrible state with my mental health, again, what I hear is how rubbish of a person I am.
Right.
And I'm so terrible. How could I have done this? I can't even do anything right. So you see what's happening. Have that happening over time, then the logical conclusion you come to is that there is no point in going through life because I'm such a terrible person. I can't do anything right. I've done all the things I've done wrong. It comes to be a logical conclusion. It doesn't make sense to us looking in, but to the person, they see this is just a way out of my pain sometimes, for me to escape this deep pain that I'm in, that I've tried everything and nothing's worked. And they get to that point. I don't know if that answered the question.
Well, yes. And so it goes back again to how one can deal with issues that are going on within themselves. And so it goes further back to know that the idea of support is very, very crucial. And I think the crux of everything. And so hence the reason why I really wanted to do this. And I really do appreciate you consenting, because your perspective added to all of what is out there, I think can help, because we're winding down really to the end of all of that. So in a nutshell, just to go over what we did and or what we just said, maybe with 5 pointers you wish to give to anyone listening out there with regards to suicide awareness, with regards to support for potential victims, as well as support for family members. Perhaps just 5, if that's not too many.
Okay, the first thing I would say is, it's okay. You are not alone. That would be the first thing I would say. Because I think what happens is that you feel I'm the only person that's happening to, and everybody is fine, and I'm the person who's. So it's okay to not feel okay. You're not alone. The second thing would be to speak to somebody. Find a trusted person to speak to. The third thing I would say is be that safe person for someone else. Be that safe person for someone else. And the fourth, I would say, pay attention to your emotions. Whatever that emotion might be at any given time, our emotions are there to help us and to teach us how we can be better. So pay attention to your emotions. What are your emotions saying to you? Don't just dismiss your emotions or try to move on to a better emotional feeling.
Yes.
But try to ask of it a question. I do this, and I know it might sound a bit weird, but I've started practicing it out loud, saying out loud, okay, anger, that's an interesting feeling you're having there, Ramona. What's that all about?
Yes, I do that too.
Dig deeper. I think, we're afraid to go deep, but actually the deeper you go, the better it will be. So pay attention to your emotions. And then the fifth thing I would say is so what I said,
said it's okay, you're not alone, it's okay not to be okay sometimes. You said ensure that you speak to someone. You also say in terms of the other person, be a safe space for someone. You said pay it to all of us, pay attention to our emotions when they come upon us. And so you're down to number 5.
Okay, so the fifth thing I would say is start a journal. Whoever you are, whether you're okay mentally or not, start journaling. solid a gratitude journal, particularly. You can journal, like when you were young, you used to have Dear Diary. I went to the park today, start journaling. Journaling is a great way of getting your thoughts out, that they're not staying in and becoming suppressed constantly. And it allows you to develop clarity around your thoughts. So I would say journaling, particularly try gratitude journaling. So I had a system with my gratitude. I have a system where at the end of the day, I would think of one thing I did today, 3 things I saw, and 5 things I'm grateful for. So that's 1, 3, 5.
That's excellent. So what about
what is that? Is it one thing?
One thing I did, 3 things I saw.
One thing I did.
3 things I saw, and 5 things that I'm grateful for.
Yes.
Yeah.
On a daily basis. As if you don't do it every day, that's okay. But try to do it regularly. And I think that has been, for me personally, a lifesaver.
Okay. And so for persons too who are very creative, who like drawing, and they're not good at their words, probably they could add pictures or designs or whatever it is to get that across.
Yes. So you art journal. Yeah.
Okay.
Art journaling. Some people have a journal that's for art. Every day they just do something in it.
Yes.
And it's amazing.
Okay. I have a question about the journaling, because I do like the idea of a journal. However, I have a question, and the question is because it's coming from a personal experience. What if while you're journaling, you ended up feeling worse than what you anticipated? What do you do? Because the reason why I said so is because I've always been writing, and several years ago, I used to journal things that happened a lot to me. But in the end, when I went back and read it, I felt worse. So I just cut out doing that type of journaling. What do you say about that?
So what I would say, that sounds like unresolved issues. Because if you, in the midst of your journaling, and that's why I talk about getting the thoughts out. If in the midst of your journaling, you begin to feel uncomfortable about something you're journaling, that is a sign that is something you need to pay attention to. So again, whether you need to go deeper and go to therapy or speak to somebody about it, you don't ignore it. So if it uncovers something uncomfortable and think, oh my goodness, I didn't realize this was inside of me, then that's something to pay attention to. And see and try to stay with that theme and try to go a little bit deeper. And in that case, it might be that you needed to speak to somebody else about it rather than try to deal with it on your own. But I would say stay with that, because like I said, we don't want to be uncomfortable. We want to feel happy and nice all the time. But sometimes it bears to stay with the uncomfortable thing for a little bit, not forever and ever. You've got to give yourself a bit on how long you wallow for. I talk about paying attention to emotions. If I'm sad, it doesn't mean I'm just going to stay in a state of sadness all the time and not cope with it. But it's that I'm saying, okay, I'm feeling sad. Why am I feeling sad? And how long am I going to give myself to be sad? So say yourself, okay, I do that sometimes. I say, okay, I'm just going to be miserable for a day. And I'm not going to fix it. I'm going to be miserable for a day. And I do that. And the next day, I start over.
But that's not a good feeling, to be miserable. I mean, no one wants to be miserable.
No, but I'm saying sometimes you might not have the energy to deal with.
Beyond.
Yeah, so you have to give yourself time. So you don't just, but if you set, you have to have intentions.
Right.
So you say, gosh, I'm just feeling really rubbishy today. And you know what? Today I'm going to have a rubbish day. So you're choosing. You see, that's the thing about when you make it, you're the one choosing. So the emotions aren't taking over, but you're taking control of the emotions, even by making that choice and saying, okay, I'm going to have a horrible day today. And then tomorrow I'll do something different. And then you have to then follow that up.
So the idea is not to stay there, is to own
No,
what's happening at the moment, but then you move on from there, because it is never good to remain in that down state. Yes?
no. And it's
Yeah.
not so much moving on, because you can never move on, because that's part of you. You can't move on from yourself, but it's, I would say, moving forward. So your journey, it's a journey, it's a process. So we're going through this thing, you know, because the idea of moving on suggests we're leaving something behind. Rather, as opposed to, if I'm journeying through something, that yesterday was also part of my journey, was also part of the process. So that horrible feeling I had, that's still part of who I am and my process. But I'm learning from that.
Mhm.
I've learned from it, and I'm taking that lesson I've learned along with me. So that the next time I come across this same crossroad, I remember, that happened 5 weeks ago, and this is how I dealt with it. So maybe there's something else I haven't dealt with. Maybe I need to do some more work on that. Or maybe I gained some skills the last time that I can use to help me in this next time.
Okay. Well, Ramona, I really do appreciate your input, your collaboration, cooperation, your encouragement in all of this. And I think we can do something again another time. So here we will end off. So for my friends and followers on Garden Conversations with Rose, this has been a very eye-opening session, the interview, segment 2, session 2 with Ramona Samuel. I didn't say it at the start, but we were called baby and sister. So Ramona is baby because she's the last, and I'm the sister because I was a little sister for a very long time. That's just something I'm putting out there. I hadn't put out there before. So I want to thank everybody who has been part of this, who will be looking at this conversation, this interview. And I hope that you can gain something from it. And remember, we live in a society, we are social beings, we must look out for each other, and we must also always take care of ourselves. So bye-bye for now, and there ends our session 2, our segment 2 of the interview with baby and sister Ramona Samuel, and Rose from Garden Conversations with Rose. Thank you.